You're here. I am honored enough to be on the Mighty every Wednesday, third Wednesday of the month. Again, I'm Dr. Margaret Rutherford, and I'm a clinical psychologist out of Fayetteville, Arkansas. And I've been working with the Mighty for 4 years now, doing these Facebook Lives. And it's literally something I just so much look forward to every month. So today, we're going to be talking about rumination. And I chose this topic because, my gosh, I mean, I'm a pretty optimistic kind of person, but even I have caught myself just going down the rabbit hole of negativity and catastrophe and everything else. And so hi, Monica. So I really thought this would be a good topic because I've listed here all the things that that tend to trigger rumination, and goodness gracious, I mean, about four out of seven of them are things that we are all going through, every one of us. So, and some more than others, obviously. So while people are joining, let me tell you a little bit about myself. I actually, psychology wasn't my first career. I was a jingle singer in my 20s in Dallas, Texas. And so I got quite accustomed to being in front of a microphone. But I went into music therapy, and that led me to clinical psychology. So, and I've been doing this since 1993. I do blog at drmargaretrutherford.com, and I've got a podcast that I absolutely adore doing called the Self-Work Podcast. And that's everywhere you want to find podcasts, and Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Player FM, all that stuff. So I'd love to have you. Hi, Nikki, and hello, Rita. It's nice to have you here too. What I think is interesting about rumination is that people tend to think it's the same thing as obsessing. And it's not. Obsessing or obsessions tend to have you're thinking one thing over and over and over again. Any of you who have OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder, know exactly what I'm talking about, that literally you can't get something out of your mind and you just think it over and over until often you do a compulsion, which means that you choose a behavior, or you are compelled to do a behavior to lessen the anxiety that the obsession brings. Everything from, I need to check the doors because I'm not sure I did the locks, to obsessions can be, I need to count things before I let them go. I've got to, I don't know if I can't remember if I have my car keys. And so you're always looking through your purse or something to see if they're there. So often your obsessing is the same thing over and over and over. Whereas a rumination is more free thought, but it has a real negative spiral to it. So you're really purposefully and intentionally, it can seem as if you are working out a problem in your head, but the problem is you're not problem solving, you're ruminating. So you are beginning to think more negatively and more negatively. The actual experience I had, that I was looking around for a subject for my podcast a couple of weeks ago, and I thought, gosh, what could I write about? And I don't know, I bet nobody's reading it anymore or listening to it. And I bet they're tired of me. And why am I doing this? And I'm too old to do this, and on and on and on, till literally, I mean, if I'd let myself go on, I would have said, I don't want to do the podcast anymore. Forget it. And I love the podcast. It was just the way my mind was going at the time. And I think we all can do that. We all can ruminate. And the pandemic and all of the ambiguity around the pandemic has just been so, so difficult. I talked to someone today who told me that she's never felt like this in her life, that she's been a very extroverted, social person, very curious, loves to learn. And the more the pandemic goes on, the more she's tending to ruminate and beginning to think things that just aren't helpful to her. So, and also it's interesting because rumination is actually a part of lots of different mental illnesses. There's a huge amount of rumination in depression where you just can't seem to get your thoughts headed in a more positive direction, that you begin thinking one negative thing and then bam, 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 here comes some more. So it's obviously also a part of anxiety. I have anxiety, I have a panic disorder, and when I get sometimes in my head, I'm not going to do this well, or I wonder if anybody's going to be looking at me, then here comes my anxiety, and I really struggle to not see myself as completely out of control and all that kind of thing. It can be part, obviously, of OCD, as again, different than obsessions. It can be part of PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, where you either like avoid thinking about the things that have happened to you, or you cannot seem to get them out of your mind. And that certainly happens with CPTSD, which is complex PTSD or chronic PTSD, when the stressors have been something that literally, happened over years and over and over and over again. So I was hoping that this would be a topic that some of you would really enjoy talking about. Monica asks, is catastrophizing the same as rumination? That's a great question. I tend to think of they're very similar. They're cousins, first cousins, second cousins. Catastrophizing is considered completely irrational, and I don't think. Wait a minute, somehow my microphone's doing something funny. Hold on. Hopefully it'll go away. Okay. Catastrophizing is, whoa. Oh, there, it stopped. Catastrophizing is more a really irrational thought, because you're taking something that has happened once, or that just happened, and making it, seem as if it's going to lead immediately to things going awry. I think rumination is more, well, for one thing, it's easier to stop, and because it is purposeful. Catastrophizing is not necessarily purposeful. Your mind just does it. When I'm ruminating, I'm very aware of what I'm doing. I am, oh, well, that could happen, and that, that's probably, I shouldn't do that. And so rumination has a more of a sense of, what would be the good word for it? Like it's just kind of sucking energy to it. You just it'll suck you down, where catastrophizing is much more of a thing of, this will lead to the absolute worst thing that can happen. And so that may be a little bit semantic to consider whether those are really different or not, but I see them as different. I don't know if I explained that very well. Cindy, what do you think of ketamine treatments with a doctor for depression, anxiety, and PTSD? Well, the clients that I have had that have used it, now remember, I'm not an MD, I'm a PhD, okay? So I have a doctorate, I don't have a medical degree. But the patients that I have referred to get it, because you don't need a prescription for it, have really benefited from it. It is a newer treatment that is not covered by insurance, unfortunately, as of yet. I think it probably will be. But it is a little tiny bit of a ketamine drug, which was a party drug. A lot of people took ketamine when, to get high when you were doing at parties and things like that. This is a tiny little bit of it, and it affects the opioid receptors, I believe. And so anyway, it is it seems to work beautifully for many, many people. I've had people with chronic suicidal ideation who do ruminate about killing themselves, and it goes away with ketamine. I have had one person do it, and it didn't seem to make much of a difference. But she also did it when it was just getting started here, and I think she was in the medical profession, and they used her almost as a treatment subject. Well, I need me to call back because that's really probably pretty loud for y'all. Okay, well, this is interesting. Technical difficulties. So Cindy, I hope that's helpful. Okay, Ted, does setting aside a time to allow to ruminate like 15 minutes? Yeah, well, rumination, again, how is it different from worry? And I agree that they are, again, sort of like catastrophizing. They are very similar. I think when you worry, you really think your worry is helping to prevent something. If I worry about my child on the highway, they won't have a wreck. A lot of people worry and they think this is serving a function. It's called the work of worrying. And so often, if you realize that that's what's happening, and so you can begin to say, I don't want to do that, then you set aside like 15 minutes a day to do a worry journal. And that is something that I think is very helpful, can be very, very helpful, because what happens is you both, you may be worried about something that's actually, it's not an irrational worry to have. It's something that, maybe someone is ill, or maybe someone is doing something they've never done before and you're worried about them, or it's not necessarily that the worry is irrational, but when the worry takes over, that's the problem. And so that's when it can become almost, I know people with generalized anxiety disorder will tell you, I believe strongly that my worry about this is keeping people safe, keeping people that I love safe. So I like worry journals. I often recommend them. And it's simply, again, setting aside a time to begin to write everything furiously down that you can think of that you're worried about. And then you close your journal after 10 or 15 minutes and you think, I'm not going to worry until I sit down to write again. And you do that every day. So you are sort of corralling the worry. You're honoring it, but you're also corralling it. So I think it's a great technique. Oh, Monica, you can't hear oh, well, good. You can't hear my microphone go. That's good. I can hear it big time. Alfie, I don't understand all these big flamboyant words when speaking to people that haven't come from a higher education background. It would be better to keep it simple, as I don't understand a lot of this. Okay, Alfie, that's a great point. Rumination is simply overthinking something in a negative way. That's basically what it is. And so, it's just about it's sitting and pondering in a way, again, that is harmful or is just not going anywhere positive. It's just not problem solving. When you problem solve, you actually come up with ideas that might help something get better. In rumination, you're beginning to think that nothing will help, and you're just going from thought to thought to thought that's getting worse and worse and worse. I hope you understand that. I really don't like to use big words. I really like to try to keep things simple, and it's easier for me to understand if it's simple. And hopefully it's easier for everybody to understand. So I'm glad you spoke up, because I will watch that. Karen, how can I stop myself from negative overthinking, catastrophizing? It has gotten to the point where it wakes me up in the middle of the night and there's no way to get back to sleep. Well, let me see how I can understand that, or what I can think about that. I think that it's when your worry wakes you up at night, you're probably, my guess would be that you're not doing anything during the day, during your conscious hours, to actually try to work on it. So your unconscious mind is still mulling it over and mulling it over. And so it's waking you up. So what I would recommend is, instead of catastrophizing or overthinking, what can you actually do about it? What do you have control over? during your conscious hours that at least might address a little tiny bit of it. You may not, be able to do the whole thing that you're overthinking, but if you can say, am I really spending energy on this that's helpful, or if I'm just making it mental? I've often said that thinking and insight and all that stuff is wonderful, and you get to connect the dots, right? But where you really get hope is from behavior change. You see things beginning to change. So, I don't care how small it is. So I would think about, okay, what am I overthinking? What do I actually have some control over of what I could do about it, and then do it? I don't care how small it is. The other thing you can do when you have anxiety waking you up at night, you can keep a little notebook by your bedside table, and you just jot a few words down of what you're worried about. And then, get up, don't toss and turn necessarily, get up, have a glass of milk, do whatever you need to do to take care of yourself, but then get back in bed and try to relax and just try to go back to sleep, because you said, I'm going to worry about that tomorrow. I'll think about that tomorrow. Okay. Sorry, I'm a little distracted because my mic system keeps going loudly, so if I'm sort of stuttering a bit, I apologize. Um, Ted, thank you so much. A therapist recommended a rant journal for 15 minutes in a marble notebook. I don't know what a marble notebook is. It has helped. I love that. A rant journal. That's really great. Hypervigilance. Is that okay? Sure, Alfie. Thank you. Hypervigilance. Oh, how is hypervigilance different? Well, hypervigilance is to me more of a really aroused state. Like you're always scanning the horizon, whether that be the mental horizon or the physical horizon of where you are, what's out there that you need to watch for and guard against. Whereas rumination is a kind of a more, it's not necessarily an arousal kind of thing. Now, I guess you can really get heated the more and more you ruminate, but I tend to think of it as sort of a sinking down into things. Your thoughts are just getting lower and lower and lower, and it robs you of energy rather than, that hypervigilance is kind of a watching and watching kind of thing. I hope that makes sense to you. Alyssa, how do I how do I prevent overthinking dragging me into hopeless thinking, going into major anxiety, depressive state? Wow. Wonderful question. Oh, and I love the picture. That's great. I love that sense of humor. So many of us who struggle with anxiety and depression actually use our humor to help us. So I think it's wonderful that you do. That's great. I think that sense of hopelessness is it's such a problem with both anxiety and depression. And so when you got to catch yourself overthinking. When I did it a couple of weeks ago, I was in my chair and I realized I'd just been sitting there thinking of the same thing not the same thing, because that would be an obsession, but I'd been ruminating. I looked down at my watch and it was like 30 minutes after I had begun trying to think of something to write about. So ruminating and, overthinking can, well, let me make the difference, because I think of ruminating as being associated with emotions. As you are ruminating, as you're thinking, you're having emotions about it too, one of which can be hopelessness. Whereas I think of hopelessness as a much more emotional state. I feel hopeless. Rumination is not a feeling. Hopelessness is a feeling. And so one of the things you can do about feeling hopeless is, again, and I don't mean to oversimplify this, but it really is that you can think, all right, if I'm feeling hopeless about X, what can I do to give me more of a sense of control? and whether it really has to do with the thing you feel hopeless about or not. I mean, we can't do anything about COVID. And you may be struggling with how do I keep myself safe, or how do I keep my grandmother safe, or whatever. But you can, make sure her mask is clean, or, do something that would help you feel like something is leading you to a sense of competence. So hopelessness is just such an empty, um, um, dragged down feeling. So anything that can help you feel a little more energetic, a little more competent. Again, I don't think it has to be in the area that you feel hopeless about. It can be in almost anything. So Leslie, Dr. Rutherford, I think you're very down to earth and relay info, advice in a helpful way. Thank you. Oh, you betcha. Oh, and look at the cute, is that a kitty? I got new cataracts, and I think, yeah, that's a kitty. Thank you, Leslie. That's very nice. Monica, the hard part is when you know it's something you can't control, like the pandemic. It makes my PTSD kick in big time. Yep. In fact, the triggers for rumination are trauma. It's huge. Either it's recent trauma, you're worried about something in the future, you may be struggling with something from the past and you ruminate about it. I tend to ruminate more about things from the past, but I think that it can be past, present, or future oriented. And you're right. There's so much about this pandemic that has triggered rumination and just feeling as if there's no hope, and leading you down into a negative spiral. And perfectionism can also do it when you're ruminating about how to keep things perfect. Low self-esteem. I can't do anything. I bet I'm going to lose my job. I bet this, that, and the other. And so you just sink lower and lower. So I think that there are some people who think some rumination is helpful. And those people are folks who write about if rumination is associated with thinking about what you can do. Now to me, that sounds kind of like problem solving, but they called it rumination in the article I read, and said, just kind of letting your mind drift from thing to thing and say, well, no, that won't work, but this might work. No, that won't work, but this might work. Something like that. Karen, actually the worry is about things I do not have any control over. Things like, will I get audited? My special needs daughter might never have whatever, especially anything related to Social Security, the government, and such. I'm afraid I'm doing something wrong, so I examine everything all the time. Okay. I remember working with a guy one time who had gotten his financial situation really crazy, and his taxes had gotten all wonky, and he was really he was quite ashamed of that. And basically for years he couldn't open anything from any kind of government office. He just wouldn't allow himself to open it. So that's not an uncommon thing. I've actually seen several people like that. But obviously the thing that's really bothering you is the things that you do not have control over. But no, we don't have control over where we're going to get audited, but we can do our taxes the best way we can, which is the thing that a lot of us try to do. Or if I'm your special needs daughter, I don't have a special needs child. I have worked with people who do. But you've got the present, and you can try to give her the things that will help her out now. And that's really all you have control over. So that would be where I would focus, was on the present. And then stay, I'm sure you're really concerned about her, and look into programs all the time and things like that. Again, it's sort of accepting that we do have limits as to what we can do. We never know truly what's going to happen in the next minute or two. Like, I didn't know I was going to have this sound difficulty. It's not a big deal, obviously, but I do think that if you look around your house and say, my house is a mess, and you just feel hopeless and you're not going to do anything about it, what you can do is say, I'm going to clean off this tabletop. Now, obviously, cleaning off the tabletop is not going to make the rest of your house better. But then, you can pick up a little energy from that. And then you think, all right, what else can I control? So, Valentina, I suffer from anxiety, and it happens in this period that I wake up, and for the first second, everything is fine, quite calm, as a good, sweet morning should be, clear feeling. But in a couple of seconds, the radio clicks on, thoughts and heartbeats run. It's a click. I found that free dive and related breathing exercises is a good way to calm down the radio. It's helping me a lot. Love that metaphor. It's the radio clicking on. You're right. I mean, how many times have I heard from people who've had people they love die, and they say, I wake up and just for a second, I don't remember they're dead. And then all of a sudden, wow, and here comes the grief and here comes the depression. For you, it sounds like, it's more, hold on, I've lost your there. And it's got a real, thank you. Related breathing exercises. I just did in fact, we can do one right now. I just did a great interview with the woman who's a part of the team of a podcast called Anxiety Slayer. Wonderful podcast, by the way. And we talked about a breathing exercise that can really help people. And it's if you breathe in through your nose for 5, hold for 4, and breathe out for 7. You do that 5 or 6 times in a row, and you're going to calm down. Let's try it, okay? Okay. Breathe in. Hold. Breathe in. Gently hold. You do that 6 or 7 times, and your body, your parasympathetic nervous system, big word there, just meaning your calm down system, is going to respond. Okay, that it has to. It's biologically set to do that. So I do that sometimes, Valentina, when I wake up in the middle of the night, and I will do some breathing and just using some calming things to say to myself, and then that really, really helps. So great. We forget that our physiology can either hinder us or hurt us or help us. Rebecca, Anne, how do I control the flight feeling when I'm feeling too sensitive to sound? Multiple things going on at once. Wow. Yeah, that is really tough. There are a lot of people who are sensitive to sound. There are people who are sensitive to texture. There's people who are sensitive to smells. And basically, I think that one of the things I'm not an expert on this at all, but one of the things that I've heard that people can do is things like carry around a little bit of lavender scent. And when you're feeling that the sound is too much, you actually engage another sense. And so you can breathe in that lavender and help yourself calm down. You can, of course, just take care of yourself by withdrawing. But a lot of things, when you're getting overwhelmed, you find the one thing in another sense. Some people like to rub their hands in cold water or get cold water on their hands. That seems to calm them down. So anything that can sort of take you out of that sense of your sound, of your hearing, and get you in another sense might be helpful. Casey, I've recognized I'm hypersensitive or hypervigilant to my boyfriend's words and or phrasing in conversations. Since my past experiences in childhood has shaped my adulthood, as all of us have, I'm slowly and actively working on recognizing and retraining my past behaviors to current present life. However, my boyfriend's a fixer, so it's a bit tough to help him understand. Any advice? Yeah. You betcha. You're getting triggered by some tone of his or some word he's using. You can ask him to help, to say, could you say that to me in another way? But when you figure out the trigger, you can begin to then say, well, wait a minute. How am I different from that child who was either talked to that way or what that word meant? What do I need to remind myself in the moment? I'll never forget this one instance. My husband and we had one child, and that child was probably about 2 and was taking a nap. And my husband, who had been an unbelievable dad, and he's a golfer, but he probably played golf in 2 years about 3 times, said something to me about, well, maybe I'll play golf this afternoon. And I got infuriated. And he looked at me and I looked at myself, and it was like, oh my gosh, what just happened? Well, what had happened, strangely enough, was that question about golf had triggered an old memory for me about a fight that I had seen. Well, it wasn't a fight. It was, they never fought, my parents, but it caused a lot of unhappiness. And Dad would often say, I wonder if I'm going to play golf today. And I was left with my mom to kind of pick up the pieces, and she used me as a confidant, and it was not a good place. And all of that just came rushing back to me when I heard this question asked, I wonder if I want to go play golf today. It had nothing to do with my husband. So, a lot of times we do get triggered, and we will have a hypervigilant reaction or an overreaction, or sometimes an underreaction, interestingly enough, to where we need to figure out what that trigger is and do some healing around that. And it sounds like you're doing that. So good for you. Okay, great questions, by the way, guys. Wonderful questions. Alfie, sadly, it's having the enthusiasm to complete it or recognize it that I need to do. I know there are online CBT exercises, but my mind is very forgetful too, as it seems to be consumed with racing thoughts. I've really noticed how forgetful I've become. Okay, so your mind is racing. One of the things that perhaps you could do, no, the sedatives is probably not a great idea. Wait a minute, am I kind of... Okay, so there are online CBT courses. I think I just read 2 at once or something. Okay, hold on. Well, okay. So if you're forgetting to go do this, to sign up for an online CBT thing, what you can do is literally write yourself a note. I mean, I ask people to have a specific time, a specific, they know exactly at 8:07 in the morning tomorrow morning, they're going to, sign up for that course. And it almost becomes a playful thing rather than chastising yourself and once again saying, oh, damn, I forgot. I can't believe I forgot. I'm a terrible person. I forgot. You approach it with more of a sense, not of shame that you haven't done it yet, but that, you kind of make it something that you're helping yourself with rather than shaming yourself for. Racing thoughts are tough. I think probably often people's racing thoughts has something to do with worry or concern. And so I would use the worry journal and then try to slow down your thinking the rest of the day. Say, no, I'm going to write about that tomorrow. Because when our minds are going faster than we want them to, of course, it can be a sign of some sort of hypomania or mania, which, can be helped by a lot of, medications and that kind of thing. But maybe some of your racing thoughts are more about worry or concern, and actually you need to do some writing about that. And the writing itself will slow them down. Okay. And yes, everybody becomes forgetful if their thoughts are racing. Your mind is, going someplace it shouldn't go. I don't know if you're on medication. That often can help. Let's see. Let's see. I consider myself treatment. This is Joey. I consider myself treatment resistant with my issues. I've been on more meds and been to more hospitals than I care to count. I just can't get out of my head enough to do anything good for myself or my family. It's tearing myself and my family apart. Help? Well, there are newer treatments, Joey. There's one that is covered by insurance called Transcranial magnetic stimulation. It sounds kind of scary, but it's really not. It's not ECT, it's not electroconvulsive therapy, but it is actually they use magnets in order to they reach out to a certain part of the brain, the magnetic force, and it actually, the theory is that it begins to help your neurons build new pathways to one another. That's what ECT does as well, but in a very dramatic way. And transcranial magnetic stimulation is very safe. There's no memory loss, and it can be very, very helpful with treatment-resistant depressions. And again, it is covered by insurance. The other thing is to try the ketamine treatments that we were talking about before. But I think I would probably swing to, since you've been in and out of hospitals and on a lot of medications, that you're the kind of person that transcranial magnetic stimulation would probably be really good for. It is available now, I think, all over the United States. I don't know where you are, but you have to go to a psychiatrist to get it, though. It's not something that a regular doctor will have access to. Okay. Janie, I just wish we could have an on-off switch for our brain. You know, wouldn't that be nice sometimes? I agree with you. I can get so sometimes I have to tell my patients that my mind is going faster than my mouth. So I really have to, I struggle with that myself a bit. Rosita, I have, whoops. Let me see, where is it? Ah, here you are. I have bipolar and I get triggered very easily when people are doing wrong against me. I'm on Baylor. I don't know what that means, but it doesn't help. I still explode at injustice. What can I do to limit those outbreaks? Okay. I still don't know what Baylor is, but anyway, well, I would channel that energy somewhere that actually is in an organized fashion. I mean, it sounds like you're just exploding because you feel that perhaps it's everywhere and you're not channeling that energy anywhere. So there's lots to be upset about in our world. I assure you of that. So I would find a group and channel that and help talk to other people about, well, now, how do I, what do you do with this energy when you're not, actually working on a project or trying to get some change accomplished? One of the first things I did in this world when I was still in music professionally, I volunteered at the battered women's shelter, and I found myself getting angry because obviously my awareness was so increased, and I would find myself getting angry at people who if I saw someone treating their wife rudely or a girlfriend or a boyfriend, and I would just I wouldn't blow up, but I would certainly get angry inside because my awareness was so strong. So I guess the best thing to do would be use that energy creatively, and then maybe that will help you feel like you're really accomplishing something. Let's see. Oh, okay. It's Valar or something. Okay. Tachana, I did TMS. Sorry, I'm probably crucifying your name. I did TMS and it changed my life. I feel like I have a new brain. Wow. Now that's a ringing endorsement if I've ever heard it. So that's my sense. I had this woman who tried it, and she had been coming in every 2 or 3 years, and we would kind of help her decrease her suicidal ideation. And then sure enough, he would come back and would come back and would come back. And she said the same thing. She said the same thing. Alyssa, what do you think of the MTS? I'm asking my psychiatrist of nearly 20 years about it Friday. Um, uh, well, I've just said that. I really, I've seen it do some great things. So, um, yeah, it's TMS. I don't know what MTS is, but yeah. So I think that would help too. Ted, other than breathing, what else do you recommend before bed? Well, one, I invite you to listen to my interview with Shan Vanderleef because of Anxiety Slayer, because she had some great ideas. There's something she said that and I'm going to, if you press on the middle of your hand, that is a calming technique that I didn't know about. It uses things like meridians and chakras. And so, can you see what I'm doing? I'm just pressing. She also said if you tap on your collarbone, that is very helpful. I would check out anxietyslayer.com. And then I have an interview with her coming up next week on my own podcast, the Self Work Podcast. Monica, acupressure. Yes, that I guess that's what it is acupressure. And I don't know much about that world. I have taken acupuncture, but I've never been involved in acupressure. So gosh, there's so much to learn in this world, isn't there? My gosh. Oh, MTS, it's my foggy brain getting it wrong. Okay, it's transcranial, which is the T, magnetic M stimulation, transcranial magnetic stimulation. So that's what it is, and I really think it's helpful. Well, y'all have been a great audience. I'm sorry if I skipped. Oh, here's one more. Mac, can medication help with overthinking? Yes. Certain medications certainly will slow you down. There are medications that are considered sort of innervating or giving you energy, and then there are medications that are more sedating. And certainly, people who have racing thoughts can be very much helped. In fact, often people with bipolar disorder tell me that it is when their thoughts become more racing that's the first sign to them that they need to, or they're not sleeping. That they need to change their medication or alter their medication somehow. But yes, it can. It can. But I also think that journaling and writing is something you can do right in that moment that can be very helpful. Okay, so thank you again. I'm so glad y'all couldn't hear what my microphone was doing. Because it was very distracting. So I'm glad y'all couldn't hear it. I will be back next January in 2021. We all hope. Certainly, I don't know about y'all, but when I saw those trucks pulling away here in the United States, in Michigan, with the first vaccines, my eyes filled with tears. I didn't realize I think how much of my own anxiety or just maybe I was a little bit hopeless myself. And I just there is hope coming. And I for those of you who may have already suffered loss, I'm so sorry. I'm sure this holiday season is even hard. I know that this holiday season is even harder because of that. So please take care. I will see you the third Wednesday of January. And Alyssa, you weren't, or Alfie, you weren't rude at all. You know, that's fine. I like suggestions. Constructive criticism is always good, I think. So join me again, third week of January. And we'll try to find a topic that you are interested in. If you want to email me at askdrmargaret at drmargaretrutherford.com, please feel free to do so, to say, oh, I'd love for you to talk about X, Y, or Z. Cameron just put up my website, and my podcast is the Self-Work Podcast with Dr. Margaret Rutherford. Oh, and I have a book called Perfectly Hidden Depression, and it's available everywhere. It is a workbook about how to really work out issues with control and hiding trauma and never revealing trauma because you feel like it's just too shameful to do so. And so you've painted yourself in a corner, basically. It's not just about perfectionism, but It's available. It's also very user-friendly, I think. It's called Perfectly Hidden Depression. Thank you all. Oh, Monica, thank you. um, it, it took up 4 years of my life and, well, actually 6 years of my life. So I hope that it is helpful to anyone who needs to read it or wants to read it. Y'all have a good holiday season. Hopefully we've been helpful with some of these ideas. You all are helpful with each other, which is even better. And I love that. And so please take care. See you in January. Bye for now.